RPS starting about a week from really this today, but we want to get a closer look at some of the questions that you guys have. It's been a really difficult year for a lot of these students, for teachers, kind of abruptly ended last year. We know they've been through so much.
Well, it's been unprecedented, and we think about the teachers and not only them, but administrators having to deal with all these changes, CDC guidelines, all of that this year. So we're joined now with the district superintendent, Dr. Ehren Jarrett. We're so thankful that you're spending time with us this morning. We know you're so busy, really in the months leading up to this. Spring basically canceled this year, but now leading into the school year, we have a couple questions. Actually, today we were reporting on a big Zoom outage, tech issues. We think a lot of your students that are going to be remote learning. How do you deal with that? Is there a backup plan for some of those students? Because we think some students really don't have a lot of options if, their technology isn't working at home.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thanks so much for having me this morning. I really appreciate the opportunity. These have been really challenging times for our whole country, and certainly in the Rockford Public Schools, we're doing our best to work with families. But we are very fortunate that we didn't have school yesterday during the Zoom outage. We have a backup plan, however. Our students will use Google Classroom and Google Meet as a place for a backup, and all of our adult-oriented meetings would work through Microsoft Teams. So if for whatever reason Zoom goes down, we have a plan B.
All right, that sounds good. So we think about, IT issues too, like, in class, if a computer's not working, you have an IT person kind of handling that. What happens to students, their technology at home, if something's not working? Do you have someone, coming to homes helping them out, or are they going to have to come back in school? Kind of what do parents do in that case?
Well, we've doubled our tech support, so there will be a kind of a dial-in, and then there will be an opportunity to bring things in if worse come to worse. But we also have a very elaborate manual that we put together, and one of the great things about Chromebooks and iPads is they are relatively low maintenance, and we've got the Wi-Fi issues taken care of with a great partnership with Comcast, as well as some other portable devices for Wi-Fi. So we think the Wi-Fi issue should be behind us. That was one of our biggest challenges in emergency remote learning, and we think we're going to have lots of tech support available to help students and families if they need the help.
You guys are dealing with so much right now. I took a lot of questions coming in from parents and students and teachers. I want to bring up our first one here, but at what point would the COVID spread be enough to turn to complete remote learning? Some people are saying, we feel like we're going to go right back home once we go in. How do you make that decision?
Well, the good news for me is I don't make that decision unilaterally. Really, the person driving that decision, and we're really fortunate to have her leadership, is Dr. Sandra Martell, who leads the Winnebago County Health Department. And then we also are working very closely with the state of Illinois. What Dr. Martell has been very clear on is they're going to be monitoring a number of different data points. But I think the one that's really key is, what is that positivity rate looking like? Right now, we're around 4%, and we would not want to see it go beyond 8% for 3 consecutive days. At that point, we might have to take some action. The other thing that we'll be looking at is on a class-by-class basis, school by school, student by student. Anytime something comes up, we have a school nurse in every school, and that school nurse will be working directly with the Winnebago County Health Department representatives to make decisions on a classroom by classroom basis as well. We're going to be very transparent in our communication, and we are going to do our best to keep families and students and staff all safe. And we are going to listen to the health experts. If anything comes up that says, it's just not safe to have school at a particular school or district-wide in our region because of an outbreak, we will act immediately and decisively.
Well, another question coming in from a teacher, so many changes to the schedule, to what students, teachers are allowed to do. She was worried about frequent bathroom breaks because the bathrooms are locked, at least at her high school, during passing time. They don't want those to overcrowd. So she's worried students are going to be taking so many bathroom breaks during class. And then for the teachers who might have a couple, classes in a row, when are they supposed to, have that period off and time to take a break? What do you say to that?
Well, with a question like that, I'm really glad to be the superintendent, and that is something. I have wonderful high school, middle school, elementary, and early childhood principals who will work with faculty, staff, and students, and they'll make those decisions. I have no doubt that schedules will be a little different and take some getting used to, but I have great confidence in our teachers and our assistant principals, and students to all come together to come up with logistical solutions. First and foremost, we're going to work to keep people safe. And then right after that, we're going to make sure we have good systems and processes in place to make sure that basic needs like getting to a restroom break, something we may take for granted in normal situations, every single one of our schools has a very elaborate and well-designed safety plan that's been approved by our health department, as well as all of our other core operational functions.
And it seems like, yeah, it's really just building by building, kind of making those decisions. Now, another teacher putting this question in: if a teacher is forced to quarantine due to a suspected case, who will cover the room? There's been, a lot of concerns about sub shortages. Do you think a sub would feel comfortable going into those rooms? But who covers that?
Well, first and foremost, if there is any kind of a situation in a specific room, that will be handled on a case-by-case basis by the Winnebago County Health Department in conjunction with our school nurse in the building, and we would communicate that out. If you have a situation where that class goes remote, then we would be able to serve that class remotely. If it's just an individual student and we were able to isolate it, then we would avoid trying to combine classes. So one of the resources we added for our elementary schools is we added an extra substitute teacher who will be in the building on a daily basis, just in case. So we're really trying to make the proper investments, not only in PPE and other safety equipment and cleaning equipment, but we also have really bolstered our staffing to ensure that in situations like that, we don't do things like combined classes. We really need to cohort our students together, keep them with the same teacher and student as much as possible. That's safety protocol right at the top of the list. And we will ensure that we have in-house substitute teaching available as a first choice.
You wouldn't necessarily bring somebody in from the outside. That would be somebody in the building, just because you want to keep everything in. Okay.
And we will have external substitute teachers as well, but we have added an extra staff member who can serve as a substitute teacher in all of our elementary schools. That was something we invested some dollars in to make sure that we could help people be successful with this plan.
Yeah, a lot of reconfiguration, a lot of switching around. That includes some ESL teachers reach out to us saying that they've been kind of switched to teach more general education classes. Some, subjects they really haven't taught in decades. Is there any advanced training there, or how are you, kind of getting them ready for that move?
Yeah, that was one of the unfortunate one of the unfortunate byproducts of the work that we were trying to do is when we allow families to make a choice in terms of what families want, whether it's remote or in person, we needed to balance our teaching staff and our family's choice. And so what we were able to do with those teachers is we were able to offer additional remote sections. And so we are going to put a lot of support in place to help those teachers that have made that transition, as well as making sure we support all of our ESL students in the new plan. One of the things that we're going to have in place is an instructional coach in every building. We also are going to dedicate one of our top teaching experts in remote learning is going to be spending 3 straight days with that group before we start the school year. So, and just every step along the way, the principals, assistant principal, and coaches are going to be there to help, because we know that is going to be an adjustment for some. And we're so appreciative that people are taking on different roles in order to allow students and families to have what they chose offered, whether it was remote or in person.
That our teachers, they wear so many hats. One of the big ones, I know this is a concern that I've seen with a lot of our kids, they're living in poverty. They go home to completely different situations. They go to school and that is their safe place. A lot of times teachers, only person that they can trust right now. What are we doing for the kids? I mean, how are we checking on those kids? Maybe their parents said, we're going to do remote learning. Is there any process in place to make sure they're doing okay outside of the classroom?
Well, that's a great question. And that was one of the real driving forces. It was not wildly popular with everyone in our community to offer families a choice. But one of the driving reasons the board and I felt it was important to offer an in-person choice is for the reason you outlined. We think there's such value, not only for instruction, but also for social, emotional, and family support by having that in-person option. But we know that over 50% of our families did choose remote learning. And so we are going to have daily check-ins. We are going to have social emotional support through social work, school counselors, and other personnel that will be checking in regularly with families. You already mentioned some of the tech support. There are just so many ways that we're going to need to think differently about how we reach out to support families, because we know not every family felt safe about coming back to school. So we need to make sure those remote services are as robust as they possibly can be.
No, that was a big concern. I know you've heard it too. So those kids there'll be something that will happen when they will be checked on. Because like I said, they go to school. That is where your safe place is. You will be doing something to check on them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There will be daily contact from remote teachers, as well as numerous opportunities. One of the reasons we have a different kind of a schedule on Wednesday is we wanted to make sure that there was time carved out in our week to make sure we made time for social emotional support and for those deep connections outside of the learning. We know we are in a pandemic, and we know not only do our students have significant learning needs that need to be addressed, but we also know that in many, many situations, there's a great deal of support that's needed for the student and the family outside of the learning process.
And there's just so many different moving parts to all of this, and we know there's so many different angles and everything that you have to look at. One of them being lunch. A teacher was saying that they're kind of worried, though. Some kids are now being offered, open campus lunch where they can leave the school. She's worried, what if kids congregate outside of school? Kids going together, eating someplace, and then coming back to school. Is that a worry that you have? Is there a reason you guys decided to do off-campus lunch?
Well, what we're trying to do in our health plans is try to balance. We don't want to have more than 50 people in a room at any time. That's very clear guidance. And as much as possible, we want to have students eat near the traditional lunch period. And so one of the options we're looking at, and it won't be for every student, many of our students arrive by bus, but we did want to have that open campus available to just kind of take some of the pressure off crowding in our schools. One of the good things, though, is I think with nearly 50% of our students opting for remote learning, we think we're going to have much smaller cafeteria groupings, and we'll have no trouble staying below the 50. And we also think we're going to have very, very small class sizes that'll be under 20. So I do think it was important to do everything we can to keep students below those large congregations. And off-campus lunch was one way to do that. That's really a specific solution for high school. We're, of course, not doing that for middle school or elementary school.
All right, well, we ask you just one more question here. We appreciate all the time you're giving us. I know you've seen a lot of teachers very scared. I mean, some of them almost in tears. We've seen some of their car parades, the way that they've been trying to protest. They're afraid to go back. I mean, anything that you're doing for a lot of these teachers that say we want strictly virtual learning, we don't feel comfortable going into the classroom. I mean, just that supports the decision from the district.
Right. Well, there's two ways we've addressed that just structurally, and we understand that we are in a pandemic. We are in very unprecedented, challenging times, and our heart goes out to our families, our students, our teachers, all of our staff. This is tough on everybody, and we first and foremost we recognize that. And one of the things we've been able to do is we have nearly 200 remote teaching positions. So for those who have pre-existing conditions and are really above and beyond the average concerns, there were opportunities to mitigate risk in that area. We also have very, very elaborate safety protocols that are going to be in place to try to make sure everyone stays as safe as possible. We're going to be really relentless about PPE. Class sizes are going to be below 20 across the board in this district, which is going to be unprecedented. We're going to have the proper social distancing with furniture. Every single school has a very well-designed health and safety plan that I believe will help keep faculty and staff safe. So while there's no perfect plan or no perfect amount of reassurance we can give, we are doing everything in our power to make sure faculty and staff, as well as students and families, feel as safe as possible.
Right. Well, we appreciate so much your time with us. I know you're so busy, so many things changing every day. Real quick, though, is there a place that if people have concerns where they can head to and ask those questions?
Absolutely. Please go to rps205.com, and we have a little tab called Let's Talk. And what Let's Talk does is it gets, we have somebody that is at all times looking at that, and we immediately send those requests electronically to the right department or school so we can get back to you really quickly. It's worked very well. It also helps us aggregate those questions for free to create an FAQ page, which we update on a weekly basis.
All right, well, we appreciate all of your time. Thanks for being with us today. Good luck next week. We know it's going to be a whole lot different.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and we're all in this together as a community, and we're looking forward to hopefully offering a wonderful school year under very, very challenging circumstances, and it's going to take all of us working together to make that happen.
Definitely.
Great. Thanks so much.